Mixed Messages is a podcast by Bree Graham and Emily Madigan, two mixed women trying to navigate the complexities of living between multiple communities in these divided times. On today's episode, we are talking to Suzie Juul about her life experiences and her identification as biracial within the arts community. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to give you a content warning and a trigger warning for today's episode. We do discuss child abuse, suicide, and traumatic adoption stories, so please guard your hearts.
Hi, Suzie.
Hi, Bree.
Hi, Suzie.
Hi, Emily.
Thank you so much for being
on
here with us.
You always do this.
I'm
always
sorry.
do this.
How do I always do it? What do you mean I always do it? You always do it.
No, it's just amazing. Like, we literally start every single podcast the exact same way, completely unintentionally. And it's like, at some point, people are going to be like, you guys are so annoying.
I really should just let Bree do the introductions all the time because then it keeps us from doing that. But they're great bloopers, though.
It's really great for the bloops, to be honest. Suzie, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. We are really excited to talk to you.
I'm super excited to talk to you guys.
Yes.
First things first, how about you tell us who you are and what you do?
Okay. So, hello, everybody. My name's Suzie. I am usually an actress in the Twin Cities and had just quit all of my jobs to just do acting when a pandemic hit, and then I had nothing to do.
No. Oh, no. Ain't that just the kicker with the universe? You're like, I'm finally taking control of my destiny. And
your destiny is going to take your ass back home.
And so now I work at a senior living center, which has been kind of great and kind of a little bit nerve-wracking, I guess, because it's like the front lines of the pandemic. And that's what I do now. But I'm still singing. I'm still doing a lot of online performances and stuff, which is great. And then I own my own princess party company. So I'm doing that too. I just got a new dress yesterday. It was handmade and like custom designed, and I'm so excited.
If you couldn't tell by the joy in her voice, I think we can just solidify for if there's any confusion that, like, yes, she is this joyful all the time, 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very true. Except for at the beginning of the pandemic, I was real sad. But I'm feeling better now.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So, Suzie, we wanted to have you on the podcast today for many, many reasons, besides the fact that we adore the crap out of you. I wanted to have you on here because you are another mixed race person.
Yes.
And your story is similar to ours in the sense that we are all mixed race, but it's different because you move through this world and through this country and through this life differently than we do. Would you mind telling our listeners how you identify and a little bit of your story and your history and just give us like a lowdown on who Suzie is?
Absolutely. So I am half Korean and then half a bunch of white stuff. I am adopted. My mother who raised me is half Lebanese, and I've recently, within the past 10 years, come back into contact with my family who gave me up for adoption. So my birth mom and I are really good friends, and I love them very, very much. I have half siblings. But I identify as half Asian, but I have a hard time saying that and then not backing it up with, but I know that I'm really white passing. So I always feel like I have to kind of like be like, don't worry, everybody. I know that I don't look Asian. So like, and then everybody's always like, wow, I didn't know that you were Asian. Like maybe when you smile, I guess I can kind of see it now that you say something about it, or like stuff like that. But
just all the microaggressions, Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of, well, I knew there was something in there,
God, that's the worst. I could tell you had something going on. Like, no.
Like, what? Thank you. I don't know what to say. So and then at the nursing home or the senior living center, it's been really interesting because I feel like there's like a heightened level of like, we didn't grow up with a lot of people who were mixed race, so we know for sure that you're not all the way white. So like I get a lot of like, are you Hawaiian? You know, like a lot of like very well-meaning older people saying like, I'm gonna guess what you are right now, as I'm like, do you want juice? Oh, okay.
I love the guessing game. It's like we're walking billboard, like a choose your own adventure game. It's like, no, that's not for you.
No, please don't. No, I just want to know if you would like juice today or if you would like some sparkling water, and please don't guess my race. Okay.
Don't need your microaggression with a side of LaCroix. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Suzie, as far as like growing up, what did that look like for you in your household? You said that your mom was half Lebanese or
Yes.
okay. So we just did a transracial adoptee episode with Patrick Jeffrey. And so he was talking about his experience growing up in a predominantly white house, in a predominantly white neighborhood, white town, white society, white everything. But we're not getting into that right now. What was that like for you?
Well, so my parents were really, really smart and kind of like thought about these things, which is great because in the 80s, I don't feel like that was something that a lot of people who were mostly white or like anything like that would really have thought about when adopting a child. So my parents were like, well, we have a bunch of books about how you're adopted. So I learned all about that I was adopted like immediately from being adopted. I was 11 months old, but all the books are like, we love you and you're adopted, and like, why were you adopted? Well, we don't know, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. And then my parents would have long conversations with me about it when I was little to be like, hey, we don't really know what happened. Like maybe it was something very traumatic. Maybe it was what was best for you, or maybe it was just really overwhelming for your birth mom and she just couldn't deal with it. And like none of those things make you the issue. It all had to do with somebody else, you know, like all kinds of stuff like that. So it was really fabulous growing up with my family. And they had books about being Korean, and my parents were like, why don't you go to Korean camp and blah blah blah. But I didn't want to because I was like, well, I don't look Asian enough, you know. Even as a child I was like, I don't look Asian enough to like go to a Korean camp. Everyone's gonna be like, why are you here, you know. So I had all these like preconceived like fears and notions about how I looked and how other people would identify me because of that when I was younger. So what ended up happening, which is like not really okay and PC, was I decided that I would identify with Native American people because I looked more Native when I was little. And so I was like, cool, I have all these books about being Native American and I have all these like folk tales and all this stuff and I love it so much, and then just like became weirdly obsessed with Native folk tales and folklore and all these books and being like, this is who I am, even though I'm not. I am half Korean and then Irish, Swedish, German, and some other stuff, you know.
Girl, I did the exact same thing, but with the Latinx community. Like I was like, anybody that called me Puerto Rican, I was like, cool, I'll claim that. Anybody that said I was Dominican, I was like, yep, me too. I am that. I was like, me and Jennifer Lopez and Adrienne Bailon, we all have like similar curl patterns. So I'm going to group myself in with that because I definitely don't fit into this white household. So I have to be something else. So
Oh my gosh. I've never told anybody actually that I was like, I'm Native, you know, so like,
Oh girl, we got to try to get in where we fit in. And everybody listening, do you see what the social construct of race does to the human psyche? If we cannot figure out, or we don't look like what everyone tells us a specific race is supposed to look like or act like or walk like or talk like, then we end up having to try to find something else that fits because of your BS race identity. It's all BS. It's a social construct and I'm so sick of it. And we all do it. All of us. I almost guarantee almost every mixed person is like, well, I don't fit here and I don't fit there. Where do I fit?
yeah,
yes.
You know,
that's Yeah, that's definitely a really interesting like common denominator, a common theme I think that's been kind of popping up. I'm really interested in something that you said, that you were gatekeeping yourself from going to Korean camp. Was that something that was like that somebody made you feel that way, or was that something that you just made up in your head and you were like, nope, this is the way it is. I don't fit in here because I don't look this way. So nope, not doing it.
I don't really know where that came from, to be quite honest. Like I probably have blocked out memories or something, but I know that my mother was part of a group of mothers who had adopted kids. So she was part of like this group. Most of them were full Korean. It was mostly Korean adoptees directly from Korea. And I'm not. I'm from Minneapolis. I was born in Minneapolis. But there was something that happened where my mom also felt like she was not really a part of the group of the families who had adopted kids, and she couldn't really go to these meetings anymore, or something like that had happened. And I remember her telling me that she didn't feel like she belonged. And then I was like, well, it's probably because I don't belong, and so I think it probably had nothing to do with me, and it probably had nothing to do with her either, but like these like fears of not being enough, or not being, I mean, because my mother is, like I said, she's multiracial too. She's half German and then half Lebanese, and so like her whole life was a bunch of people being like, your skin tone's too dark, your nose is too big. And so to this day my mom is like, I really wish that I had gotten a nose job. My nose is just huge. And I'm like, you are absolutely beautiful. And she's always like, oh, my skin tone is a little bit too like olivey and stuff. And I'm like, are you serious right now? So like my mom is gorgeous and amazing and wonderful. And she grew up in like the 70s, 50s, 70s. I don't know. She's old. She not that old, but like she's kind of old. So she grew up with all these like people who, it was just mostly white land. And so for her also, I think she had a really hard time. She doesn't really talk with me about it. I keep trying to get her to talk with me about it. And she's always just kind of like, well, sometimes the cheerleaders were mean to me, or people didn't like me because my hair was dark. And I was like, okay. And she doesn't really talk about it more than that. But yeah, so I feel like maybe some of those things transfer to me.
Oh yes, carrying the not the curse of the mother. What's it called? The mother wound. We carry the mother wounds, we, especially as female identifying people, we tend to carry the weights that our mothers carried and take them on as our own.
It's not as cool as like a mothership. Like you can't inherit like a mothership. You have to inherit the wounds.
I know. I would love the mothership. Like I would like my own mothership. Thank you so much. Get us out of here is all I'm trying. What I'm trying to say is get us out of here. Everything is nuts.
So staying in the realm of that, did you have like BIPOC friends growing up, or was it just within the Korean group of adoptees that your mom was kind of a part of?
I didn't even end up making friends with most of the people in the Korean adoptee group. There's one kid named Jesse, and I thought he was really funny and obnoxious, so I liked him a little bit, but like it just really didn't have anything to do with that group. It was just that was his personality. I ended up making friends with somebody who was half Aztec, and she was like one of my very best friends for a while when I was like in 5th grade and stuff. But other than that, no, most of my friends were all just white, and I was like, here I am. I look whitish and my friends are all white, and I guess I'm white now, But then I'd see movies like this one I really very specifically remember, What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams. And I loved it so much. And there's a part, and like spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, this movie is like 20 years old. And there's a part where his daughter says, I got to choose whatever form I wanted to look like. And I remember and they're a white family. I remember when I was little and we were on an airplane going to Hawaii or something, and you saw the air flight attendant lady. I'm sorry, my words are great right now. And you said, Asian women are the most beautiful women in the world, or something like that, right? I don't remember what the quote was, but it was something like that. And I remember being like really upset that I didn't look more Asian, like always. But then that quote, I was like, cool. Like, I don't look enough like that to be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I took away from that movie. That's not the message of the movie, but that was my message.
Yo, it's crazy, like the things that we pick up when like the whole movie might be about love, but we see this one thing that's like, you're a bad person, and you're like, I must be a bad person, or I am not good enough, even though that is not the theme. But it just goes to show you, words mean things, people. Like, words mean things, and you have no idea the impact that you are having on people. Like, sometimes lifelong impacts that in something that you so carelessly just throw away as a comment, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like the tiniest little throwaway line where she's like, she chose to look Asian in her next like life because I guess you can do that in heaven. Thank you. Like, I don't know.
Okay, so we talked about that you have the Princess Party business.
Yes, we are unaffiliated with Disney, just so everybody knows for legal reasons. Like we are not Disney. Not at all.
Yes. No, Disney, leave her alone. Because you have such an amazing love for fairy tales and storytelling, what were some of the other influences that you supported you or didn't support you growing up? You know, like watching Disney. So I know, like, I have a lot of feelings about certain Disney movies, you know, and like the stories that they led me to believe were real, and the damage that it did to me growing up. But there are others that like supported me and helped me flourish as a young brown girl. Do you know what I mean? So I was curious if you can speak to like your love of those kinds of stories and like what that did for you growing up.
Oh gosh, that is a tricky question. I guess I haven't really unpacked my
It's a
love
weird one.
for like all these fairy tales in Disney. I guess actually, now that you say that and immediately I thought about it. Okay, so um for me, I think there is a part of every adoptee's psyche that goes, but what if I'm a lost princess?
Yes.
So, or what if I'm a lost prince? You know, anything like that. So there's always this kind of like, where am I from? Who am I? Well, here are some options. I could have been born to somebody who didn't have a home and like just couldn't take care of me. But maybe I was born to a princess. She couldn't keep me for whatever reason. So I think there's this like like strange identity search that happens and then can be related to these fairy tales too.
Oh, absolutely. I loved Anastasia growing up, even though I didn't look anything like Anastasia, even though Anastasia I don't think is technically Disney.
Well, now Fox is owned by
Now,
Disney. So now, but yeah, you're right. No, she was a Fox.
She wasn't
Fox
then.
girl.
But like being part of the Romanov family and just not being able to be there, and then like her accidentally finding them. I loved that movie. And even though my mother is my biological mother, there's still always this part that was like, but like, what if my dad is actually a prince? What if my mom's been keeping it a secret from me? Because, you know, if they find me, they're gonna take me away, or someone's been looking for us and we're in hiding. You know what I mean? Like I used to think that kind of stuff too. So you're not alone, girl.
Well, yes, absolutely. I feel like I've talked to a lot of other adoptees who are also kind of like, yes. Or like Eric Sharp wrote a whole story about how he thought maybe he was like a prince for a little bit and then like met his actual family in Korea. And he's not, spoilers, sorry, he's not. But like he's still a prince to me, you know. But yeah, so I just think when you don't have your own story or pieces of your own story are missing, you can really attach yourself to other stories. And for me, it was a lot of fairy tales. And then for a while, I really rejected them. Actually, in high school, I wasn't that into Disney. I didn't really like. I was really annoyed because everyone was like, "You're Suzie. You like Pink and Disney and Hello Kitty," and I was like, "I hate all those things just to spite you." And then when I was done with high school, I was like, nah, I didn't really like that. Sorry.
Oh, I did the same thing. I picked up this whole, like, I'm a tomboy trope, which, like, if you know me, yeah, right. Literally the furthest thing from being a tomboy, but I wanted to fit in. And especially like within that time period, the girls that I was in middle school and elementary school with, like I didn't look like them and I wanted to fit in with them. So I was like, okay, if that means that I can just drop my favorite color from being pink and then just pick up my new favorite color as being blue. And I'm going to wear these oversized Gap sweatshirts so that I can fit in with you guys at the lunch table. I'm going to do it.
See, I didn't know you used to fake tomboy breathe, and we would have been friends. And back in the day in school, because I did the exact opposite. I was am a full-fledged what they call tomboy. Now I like to say I'm sort of gender non-conforming or gender fluid. But then in high school, I like wore heels every day. and I wore tight pants and like the cropped baby fat jackets and my hair plastered. It was so straight and tried
I
to be
feel like we
high
did like
femme.
Tia Tamara
We
switch.
did.
I feel like we definitely Disney movie switched where like you lived as me for a little bit, I lived as
Yeah.
you, and then we switched back, and then we're
Yeah.
like, okay, so the story ends with us just being really good friends.
Yeah. So dumb. It's so dumb.
So we're talking about your relationship with Disney and fairy tales and making up, scenarios and storylines for yourself. I'm curious to know how that worked its way into your relationship with doing theater.
Mm. Um, so I kind of started doing theater when I was little. My parents were like, do church stuff. And I was like, okay. So I sang and did some church shows and then was kind of like really discovering that I love singing. And I got to be Mary and sing to Jesus. And it was just like a whole
Oh my God, girl, I got to be Mary too. Mary over here.
I was never Mary in any of the like things. I was always like, we did human video at my church, and I was always chosen to be either the one that was like going like the drug addict and really going through a rough time that was saved by Jesus, or like one of the demons that tried to get other people into drugs. And you know what? I lived for it.
I
Listen.
100% think we need to circle back to that at a later time
Yes.
because that.
I do want to know more about that.
Anyway, sorry, Suzie, go ahead.
So I don't know. I was kind of nervous. I was really shy. I was very stage fright when I was younger. And actually, when I started kindergarten, I was so scared that the first day I took my chair and faced it to the wall at the back of the room away from where everybody else was and just sat there and stared at the wall all day. And my teacher was like, I am concerned about this child.
Oh, no.
But now I'm not like that. And so I'm just like the opposite of that. So yeah, I guess I just started really loving theater and really loving telling stories. I don't know if it had anything to do with adoption or with like really not seeing myself in any story the way that I wanted to, or any of those things. I just really had a love for telling stories and trying to get people to see things from a different perspective. Well, I don't know, trying to make their story heard, other people's stories heard on stage.
Yeah. Well, so something that we sort of touch on this pod often, which is difficult because we know that there are other people that are listening that don't necessarily affiliate with the arts community. But something that I know Emily and I have talked about multiple times is that our difficulty navigating the theater and arts community as people who identify as biracial, because if there are any parts specifically written for us, it's really limited. And we know that representation matters, but it feels like specifically on the stage, it's like minute. I feel like the chances of me seeing somebody that looks like me is higher on TV than it is on stage. So anyway, I was just wondering if you would be able to speak to some of your experiences.
Yes. So I have the fortunate, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I'm really happy and I'm really fortunate that I get to work with a theater company called Moo Theater. They're an Asian American theater company in the Twin Cities, and their goal is to tell stories from the heart of the Asian American experience. That being said, the heart of the Asian American experience is often not a biracial experience. At any theater company, really. But they're doing a really good job of working with new playwrights like Jessica Huang and many others who are biracial and who then do write stories that are biracial stories. And my frustration is that I'm usually in the first reading of the show, and then like I auditioned for a show and they ended up casting somebody who was not half Asian to play one of the roles. And I was like, are you serious? This is like finally a chance for me to play a character that is biracial, half Asian, Chinese, not Korean, but like still biracial, half Asian. And I did it. And I was beyond like just devastated about that. But there's more coming, and like I have been asked to read for other new shows and musicals that are about people who are biracial and half Asian and stuff. So that's good. But I was really frustrated because it's like it was a full Asian person who got the role, full Asian actress, and I was like, but it's finally about biracial people. But it's okay. That was a long time ago. I've like
No, right. I feel like the storylines that ever have anything that specifically say biracial or multiracial are slim to none. And I understand that we are creating space to uplift voices for people who don't necessarily always get that opportunity. But if you want to talk about people that don't always necessarily get that opportunity, biracial people very rarely ever get the opportunity to talk specifically about their story or their experience. And
Yes.
it's not the same as somebody who would fully identify within one or the other community. And it's not to say that those people don't deserve to have an opportunity to talk about their experience. But then if you keep not making room for biracial people, then we're never going to be able to tell our experience.
exactly. Yes, exactly. And so that was a very frustrating moment for me. But since then, I guess there haven't really been that many other plays that feature biracial actresses or actors at all. So that was like my chance. I don't know. But that being said, I was a part of a show by Colleen Somerville and Somerville Productions, part of Fringe, called Not Fair, My Lady, which was highlighting all of the things that are kind of outdated and need to be changed about musicals. And a lot of that had to do with sexism, but some of it had to do with race too. And so so I wrote my own monologue for it. And my monologue was about being half Asian. It was about being racially ambiguous, and it was about people projecting what they think you are on you, and how, what is race even, to me, what is it? I don't know. It's, I guess, what people think I am. It doesn't have anything to do with how I identify. Nobody cares how I identify. Everyone's identified for me. And one of the most amazing things about doing that monologue and getting to perform it in front of a bunch of people was that after every performance, there were people who came up to me who had no idea that I had written that monologue and who came up and were like, I have never heard anybody say any of those words about being mixed race or biracial ever before, especially not on a stage. And I can't believe like how moving it was for me. I can't believe how much it meant to me. It really spoke to me. And thank you so much for doing that monologue. Thank you so much for saying those things. And I finally identified for the first time ever with somebody on stage. And I was like, oh my God. And just like kind of, it still blows my mind that I got to do that, and I got to like help people identify or help people see something about themselves that they hadn't seen before. And so I'm like still writing. I'm writing shows right now and writing stuff about, but mine right now, I'm writing a fairy tale.
I love that so much. I love that you have the passion for writing like that. I think I have been in so many rooms before where I'm having this exact conversation with people and saying, there's no stories about biracial people. Where am I supposed to go on stage? Because if you really want to break it down across the board, there's not really any roles written for biracial people. And if there are, they're so small, and maybe they write out the fact that they're biracial, or maybe it's up for, question. And the thing that I have found is so frustrating is then people will say to me, well, then write your own. And I'm like, it shouldn't be my responsibility to do all of that. Like, if I'm an actress, then let me be an actress and let me tell that story, and somebody else can help me write it, or somebody else can write it. But I don't need to be the person that's responsible for writing, producing, directing, starring. And I'm not like, that's just not, it's not necessarily my responsibility, because then everybody needs to be writing their story and figuring it out. And honestly, if that's the case, then my story's probably not going to go to the front of the pile. It's probably going to go to some cis white man who already has a platform. So it's not
Right.
like my story is going to go to the top of the pile anyway.
And that's already the problem, right? Is that we do have all these writers who are writing their unique and interesting and stories that like aren't being told, and they're not being told because the people who are filtering them don't really care, right? It doesn't strike a chord with them because it's not their experience, so it doesn't really matter. So those stories just keep getting kind of pushed by the wayside, and
Yes,
people are still like, but I'm waiting for my story. But I'm not a writer, like I would like my story to be told, but I shouldn't have to do all those things, right?
yes.
Yeah. So I'm kind of right. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really know how to write, but I'm writing like 8 things.
100%.
Because why not? Speaking of like that and seeing yourself on stage and stuff. I mean, this is like so many BIPOC's like stories is that like I saw Hamilton and whatever. But like I did, and that's what happened. I saw Hamilton and the main actor who played Hamilton looked like me. Like I have a picture with, I'll send you the picture of me with him because I was like, tell me I don't look like this guy. So he comes out. That's not what I'm expecting, right? I am expecting to see everybody really, really looking like not white, right? Except for like the dancers and stuff. Cause like you guys, I am super white passing, and that's okay. But like I just didn't think that I counted. And to this day, I have a hard time thinking that I count as multiracial, as half Korean, because of the way that I look, which is so ridiculous because like I'm still half Korean, regardless of like whose genes were stronger, And so this guy comes out and I'm like, oh my gosh, Hamilton, Joseph Morales is his name. He looks like me. And then I just wept the entire rest of the show. And I kept it together enough to be quiet, so I wasn't like really upsetting everybody who was like, I paid $800 million to watch the show and this girl just won't stop sobbing. So I'm just there, just kind of like, and one of my best friends in the whole world scraped together enough money to buy me a singular ticket to go see the show.
Of course. I would if anybody gifted me Hamilton tickets, I still have not seen it live. Like I watched it on Disney Plus, which was great, but I still haven't seen it live.
Oh man, it blew my freaking mind. It was so amazing, and it was just like, I don't know, seeing America represented by Americans who look like America. I was like, cool, this should happen more.
What a concept.
What a concept.
Why is this like only in this show?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I saw Rent. It was Rent in the movie theater. And Rosario Dawson played Mimi. And I don't remember, I think I saw Rosario Dawson in the feature film, legendary classic feature film, Josie and the Pussycats. And so I had already identified with her that way. And so then when I saw her, I think I was in high school when I saw Rent in theaters. And honestly, it did not matter what Mimi's character was for me. It was the fact that somebody that looked like me, oh my gosh, I'm going to get emotional. It's the fact that somebody looked like me was playing, oh my God, no.
Girl, let it out.
I know, but I just did not want to be the first person to cry on this podcast, and here we are. But it didn't matter to me what Mimi's role was. It was just the fact that somebody looked like me. And I thought like, okay, then I can do theater. Then there's a place for me here, because my entire life I have been trying to find some place that I can fit in. And the stage was the only place where I felt like I could be encouraged and accepted for being somebody that I wasn't. And so, you spend your whole life putting up a facade of like who you are and who you can be to be accepted. And so on stage, it was like blank slate. You can be whoever you want to be and people will love you for that. So I saw her and I was like, oh, game over. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. And she could have been a heroin addicted stripper and I wanted to play her. I didn't care, and so it's hard because people just do not realize, like going back to telling these stories, like people do not realize that it doesn't matter. At least for me, it didn't matter what the story was. As long as I can see myself, then I feel validated and I feel wanted and valued. And that's like, just that goes such a long way for a lot of people.
That is exactly, I think, the way that I felt for the first time last year when I watched Hamilton. And it's so interesting because it's like I have been doing theater for so many years and I have been really happy with like the theater companies that I get to work with and the people that I get to work with and stuff. But I still feel this like, yeah, but I'm not like quite right. Yeah, but I'm not like this, and I can't do this. Or even with Theater Moo, sometimes there was a time that I was cast as Lady Tiang in The King and I was like, well, that's not quite right for me. Like she's definitely she's Thai and she's full Thai and like never really feeling like I completely fit any character, any role that I am supposed to be is exhausting. and kind of hurtful in ways that I know people aren't like intentionally maliciously being like, you're not right. Nobody's saying that, but it's like I know I'm not. Oh, I just had somebody reach out to me and say, hey, somebody gave me your name for this character. It's a Japanese character in a show. She's full Japanese. And I was like, they did? And she's like, yeah. So I just thought like maybe if you want to audition, like you should. And I wrote back like, I'm not quite sure that I'm right for that role, but I would like to talk with you about why you would think I am. And here's my headshot, and this is what I look like and stuff. And then after the weekend happened, she sent me a message yesterday that was like, yeah, you're right. You are too white looking to play this character. And I was like, yeah, I know. So I wrote back like, yeah, I hear that a lot from people who are casting characters that are full Asian and like get my name from somebody because I am half Asian. So yeah, I'm aware and thank you. And she's like, well, thank you for being so graceful about it. I was like, okay. Um,
No. It's the kicker is that we are the gatekeepers to experiences that we do identify within, but because we don't feel that we identify enough, then we remove ourselves from the situation. Meanwhile, white people just keep getting more and more jobs. So then where are we supposed to go, and where are we supposed to fit in? Because I mean, at the very least, to help with your decision making and your casting, at least let us be in the creative team, because you guys are obviously having a difficult time doing this. It's beyond frustrating.
I really just don't. It makes me so mad too, because so many of these productions and these plays and these musicals are produced by white people. Some of them well-meaning, some of them don't care about anyone but the bottom line, which is fine. It is, I mean, it's not fine, but it is what it is right now. But they have the idea of what certain races should look like. We had this conversation in one of our previous episodes with two other actresses who are Puerto Rican about the few shows that showcase Puerto Ricans, are really the one that showcases Puerto Ricans that isn't actually written by anybody of Latinx descent. People who do that show are always casting what they assume all Puerto Ricans look like, which is like me. Light skin, curly hair, maybe a little bit browner, but they hardly ever hire dark-skinned Puerto Ricans. They hardly ever hire Afro-Latinx people. And I feel like that's the same way among all communities of color when it comes to hiring, is you have all these white people that are deciding what each race is supposed to look like, not taking into consideration that all of us who identify with these races, or are told that we identify with these races, are representative of those races and should be given the opportunity to do so. But also at the same time, we're expected to make sure that the proper people are being represented in certain parts. You know, like I gave the example on our first episode about being asked to audition to play Marie Knight. And I was like, I'm too light to play Marie Knight. Marie Knight was darker than I am, and she wouldn't have been allowed in certain places. So that's important to do that. But when it comes to like a show showcasing Black artists and Black people and Black stories, I should be allowed to be a part of that, even though I don't identify as fully Black, because I am Black and it's my experience. But if we're talking about, you know what I mean? Like, so there's those weird nuances we really need to be aware of. But more people in positions of power need to be aware of the full gamut of communities that they're trying to represent within each story. And it's so important to include everyone in those.
Yes. I completely agree. when I signed up with my casting agent for commercials, I put on my resume that I am half Asian because I just wanted everybody to know that's what I am. And she said, "Get rid of that." And I was like, "Well, why?" And she's like, "Because no one will ever cast you as that. You look way too white to ever be considered for anything that's not white. No one will ever cast you as anything but white. So just take that off because it doesn't make any sense." It doesn't make any sense.
I am having, oh, okay. I got heartburn. I'm just like,
Yes.
Brie got hot. I can see her sweating from here. I can feel the heat. I can feel the heat.
I just don't think it's any of their business to tell you what you should or should not identify as when you are. What is that?
That sounds like a them problem and not a you problem. That pisses me off. And yet there are so many casting agents out there that are telling their white clients to change their last names to sound more exotic because they think that they can pass as like
Racially ambiguous.
so that they have a wider like range of roles they can play, but yet are telling a lot of people of color who have last names or first names that are a little bit more racially identifying to change their names to sound more white. I mean, it's just the politics and the games played in this industry make me so mad.
And there shouldn't be politics about identification. Identification should not be politicized. I don't understand.
Period.
I'm speechless right now. I was supposed to be Marcy Park, who was supposed to be a Korean character in 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee this past like May, which clearly did not happen. So I was working on my splits. I finally got it. And then I was like, oh no, I can't do it anymore. But actually that was an interesting conversation. I was asked if I wanted to be Marcy Park in the show. And I said, well, let's have a sit down chat. And like went out with the director and got some bread and cookies. It was great. And then was like, okay, so this character is supposed to be Korean. And how do you feel about me looking not very Korean to play this role that is Korean, even though I am Korean? Like, how do you feel about it? And she was like, I didn't know that the role was supposed to be Korean.
Oh, come on.
And I was like, oh, it is. Like, it is. And so she's like, okay, well, great. Like, that's great then. And I was like, okay. But like, what are we like? All right. And so then we didn't really have that much of a conversation about it after that, because I was just like, well, you didn't know. But it's frustrating because that whole show is written to have like, there's a Chip Tolentino supposed to be Filipino. It doesn't just rhyme, like that's how it's supposed to be. And Marcy Park is supposed to be Korean, because everybody's filling out kind of like stereotypes and tropes of people, and Marcy Park is the overachieving Asian student whose parents are stressing her out, and she's Catholic. Like that's like a huge trope of being like Korean. That's like, people think about that. I mean, Olive is really who I want to be, but like and I've been cast as Marcy Park before in the past and have turned it down, but and then some blonde girl played her.
Girl.
Everyone goes, well, we don't really have to, like, it's not actually written into the script that she's supposed to be Asian, so like it doesn't really matter that her name is Marcy Park. Park is a very Korean last name. Anyway, I have a lot of feelings about it, obviously, but and I love the director.
Mm-hmm.
I love the director who I was supposed to be working with on this show. It was just like one of those things where she maybe doesn't know musical theater as well and hadn't really heard of the show much, and what someone else was supposed to be directing the show, and then she took over last minute. So it wasn't like I don't think that she's a very smart person. Actually, she was part of the production team for Not Fair My Lady. It was just like she just got thrown into it and was like, oh, I guess I'm going to do the show. I kind of read the script, but didn't really know the backstory of like the characters and where they were supposed to be. So I was kind of coming in being like, well, let me tell you.
Let me help you through this. And I think that's a huge thing.
She, of course, was like, please tell me. Like, I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that. But I mean, do your work,
exactly.
guys.
Do your work, do your research. And not that this isn't directed at her, whoever she is. It's, because when you're thrown in last minute, you're like, I have this much time to get the show cast and get it up on its feet. Like, I don't have, like, I will do this in process, but there are many other directors and choreographers and producers in this industry that just don't do their homework. They just don't do it.
Well, and something that is so incredibly frustrating to me on the other side of the creative table is that we as actors are asked to be so intentional with everything that we do, from our audition song or monologue choice to what we wear in the audition room to how we present to who we know and all of these things, and that we need to make sure that we do our research so that when we do get asked to come back to read, that we know where this person's coming from and that we are off book and we can do all of this stuff. And you mean to tell me that there are people that are that are in charge of directing the show who aren't doing their homework? So you expect so much from me. Meanwhile, I get paid the least. So you expect me to do so much work and then also put myself in the most vulnerable position that I can put myself in front of you, in front of a crowd, and bare my soul, and you can't even do the research. Why should you Ooh, what is the point of you? Why do you get paid what you get paid? I'm not kidding. Meanwhile, there are people that will leave out of the stage door after a show, after a successful show, and have to go sprint out of the green room, out of the dressing room to catch their bus because it's the last bus so that they can get home. I feel like I need to take a lap right now because I'm so angry at I'm angry at the system. I'm so angry right now.
Yeah, that is extremely frustrating and extremely not okay, and not the way that things should be done. But again, I mean, we need more BIPOC in the room, in the doing dramaturgical work, doing, we need more people in the room directing, like, oh, Katie Bradley, who is amazing, and she works for Theater Move too. Can you tell I have a favorite theater company? She's going to be directing in the next upcoming season, and I cannot wait to work with her. And Wes Mori, who is half Japanese, and he and I are very good friends. I love Wes very much. He's actually, okay, so I started my own podcast, and he's the reason that the name of my podcast is what it is, because we would always be like, two halves make a whole. We're both half Asian. We both make one full Asian when we're together. And so my podcast is called Two Halves Made Whole. But it's inspired by what Wes and I used to say to each other all the time. And I've talked to other people who are mixed race who have been like, that's what I say with my friends. Like, this is like not just a me and Wes thing. This is like a very common thing amongst people who are half whatever. It's like, well, together we make a full person of color. Well, together we make a full, whatever. It's always finding a way to feel whole after being identified as half, I feel like, your whole life, where like you're not half, like you are a bunch of different things. And that's why it's called Two Halves Made Whole, because like you're whole, you are whole the way you are. And it's I don't know, I think it is kind of troublesome, and it does do a number on your brain to have to say I'm half all the time. I'm half this, I'm half, but really you're a full person.
So I would love to talk more about what you're talking about with your podcast and like Two Halves Made Whole, and your experiences of being biracial, and what sort of experiences did occur as you identify as being biracial. Like I would love you to talk more about but the halves, about identifying as half this and half that, and how that has sort of, those titles and people putting those things on you have sort of made your experiences.
I think mostly my experience, I think the reason why I'm always like, well, actually I'm half Asian, but I know I don't like, but then I give everybody who sees me a pass for not knowing that, is because my whole experience has been everybody saying, well, I didn't know. well, I would have never guessed in 100 years that you were half Asian, you know, or all those things. And so I feel like when I tell people what my identity is, everybody is scandalized that they didn't know, right? Like they should have been able to see that. Like they should have known that right away. Otherwise it doesn't really count to them. It doesn't really matter. Like, are you sure? Oh, but you're adopted. So like, you don't really know then, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. I remember one time for the first time, I'd found my pictures of my birth mom, and I had not really looked at those before or seen that. My parents told me all kinds of stuff and gave me all kinds of information, but I think they like waited until they thought that I was old enough or more ready to like have pictures of my birth mom. I don't know what their decision was or why, but like that's what happened. So I think I was in middle school or high school. And like a child who finally found a piece of themselves, I brought my pictures to school and was like, look, random people near me, this is a picture of my birth mom. I want to share that with everyone because it's like exciting for me to know what she looks like. And any kind of like, well, she has a lot of eyeshadow, I'd be like, you know, like, oh, you know, it was a personal attack. Everything was a personal attack. And there are people.
It was the 80s. They all had a lot of eyeshadow.
She had a lot of eyeshadow on and looked good. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it was just a lot of look, see, I am half Asian because this is a picture of my birth mom and I know that she is half Asian or she's full Asian, and I can see in this picture that she is, and here you go. But my birth mom has told me that she has had a lot of experiences where people tell her that she's not full Asian and that she's half Asian. My birth mom was also adopted directly from Korea, and we now know our birth family in Korea, and we visit them, and we've been there twice. She's been there maybe like 4 times, but I've been there twice. And so like we all go to Korea. So now there's a new part of me that like I was so excited to go to Korea. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to Korea. Like there are no mixed people in Korea. Everyone is Korean in Korea. So everybody in Korea would see me and say USA #1 and shake my hand.
Oh, whoa, that's
a lot.
That's gotta feel really weird.
It was kind of devastating. I was really looking forward to going to, and my half siblings look way more Korean. So it was only me. It was like I was singled out as like, you look really white. It was like, I'm the oldest, and then I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And it goes like this, like really white looking me, my sister who looks half, and my brother who looks like he could be full Asian. Like, it's just like, I was the whitest of the white. And here we go. Like down the line, they get more Asian looking, like my siblings. And it's always a subject that we talk about. It's always like, well, Suzie looks very white, doesn't she? You know, like, well, you don't look that Asian. And I'm always like, cool. So I think last time that I got together with my birth family, she talked about it again, because my brother has this beautiful, wonderful girlfriend. She's a fourth Japanese. No, she's fourth. I don't know. She's fourth Asian. And we're sitting at the kitchen table, and my birth mom, it was pre-pandemic, my birth mom looks at her and looks at me and goes, it's so interesting because Max's girlfriend is less Asian but looks more Asian than you.
Man.
I was like,
yeah.
And I don't think they know what a sensitive topic it is for me, but it hurts. Like, it just sucks. So
it hurts because no matter where you go, people are telling you that you're not it. And that sucks.
Well, and also like, let's layer on the added element of like meeting your biological family and getting to spend time with them and being with them in their community. And so like there's the element of the adoption, and then on top of that, like not feeling like you fit in when you were here. So then maybe going to this other place where you could fit in, and then just being singled out that nope, not fitting in here either. That's devastating, Suzie.
yeah.
Well, and that your story is so unique in the way of you're adopted and your biological mother is also adopted, you know? So then it's like, what sort of things is she carrying as far as being adopted as well?
Oh my gosh. And so much. And she was adopted by a white family, but then her story is crazy. Like, I'm just going to give you like a little bit of a little thumbnail of her story. Basically, she was adopted when she was 5. There was a super depression in Korea, and she was the youngest of she was the second youngest, I think, of 5 siblings. So she had 3 other sisters, her, and then a younger brother. And so her family put her up for adoption because she was the youngest girl. And they had intended to come back for her. They were like, we can't keep her right now. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough food. We have, all kinds of stuff. So they put her up for adoption. And when they came back to get her again, she was gone because she had been adopted to somebody in America. And they were horrified. There's actually a documentary about it in Korea, and I have it, but it's all in Korean. And it's about her meeting her birth family in Korea for the first time, and they all came to the airport, and like everybody was sobbing, and everyone was like, we miss you so much, like we are so sorry, like we didn't really want to give you up, like this was just a mistake kind of thing. Very, very overwhelming for my birth mother, of course, because like that's a lot. No. And she didn't really know there were going to be people with cameras when she landed, so it was just like all of these things. But that was before I met her. But she was adopted when she was 5. She came here on a plane, and in whatever time she was adopted, it was a while ago, they were just using name tags on sweatshirts to identify kids.
Oh.
So she and this other kid accidentally switched sweatshirts.
Oh, no.
And they went to the wrong families.
Oh my God. And the trauma.
The little girl who went to the family that my birth mom, Kelly, was supposed to go to, her little sister was being adopted by the family who adopted Kelly. So they kept talking to her about her little sister. And Kelly was like, I don't speak English. Like, I don't know what's happening. And I don't know that child. And then eventually they were like, this doesn't seem right. And realized what happened, adopted the other little girl adopted all the girls, right? So the family who were supposed to have Kelly had no one, was no longer a parent of children, because like they screwed up on the plane. And it was like, well, we can't like just send her back. Like this isn't like, we're not like rehoming kids. Like that's not what's happening. She's been with this family. She's going to stay with this family. So Kelly grew up with one brother who was the biological brother of the kids, who was very abusive, like really horrifyingly, disgustingly abusive. Like if you tell the family what I did to you, like they'll send you back to Korea and nobody wants you. Kind of.
And was this a bio child of the
Yes, this was a biological
people that adopt.
Yes,
that is not an uncommon story. That's very upsetting.
And
it's
then
upsetting how common that is.
So she grew up with these 2 other Korean kids who were adopted with her, basically, and they're her sisters. They don't talk anymore. One of them killed themselves when she was younger, and then the other, the youngest sister, and like it was very, very, so she's had a lot of trauma, and things happen.
Holy moly.
And she wrote a book about it. It's called Songs of My Family. So you can find that if you want to read about this.
We'll link that.
That is a lot. That is we have the transracial adoption episode, and we did a Patreon episode also about transracial adoption, about
Micah and Micah Schaffer. They are the YouTube family that adopted a 2-year-old boy from China, only to rehome him after 2 years of him being in their home because it wasn't a good fit. Because of,
they were specifically looking for a transracial adoptee, a transnational adoptee with some sort of a special needs child from a different country, for YouTube follows, and rehomed him. And we talk about the trauma that can cause, and also the abuse that can happen to a lot of, especially transnational adoptees. Deal with a lot of abuse.
I remember reading about, they were like, where is this child? What happened to this child? Because they just like gave their child to somebody. That's
not what you do.
That is not what you do. I'm just like, Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating to think about all these children who are, and it's always prefaced with, how aren't you so lucky that someone decided that they were going to love you and all of this. And it's like, sure, but you also need to realize the trauma of being taken from your home, sometimes from your country, and being forced without any of your consent or any of your knowledge into a different home in a different country with people who, especially if you're put in with people that are just like doing it for the YouTube follows, or doing it because someone in their family is sick and wants to adopt a child to abuse. And like, there are a slew of things. And that's not to say all adoption is like that, but it is wildly common. It is way too common for people to be ignoring the dangers of adoption. There are dangers involved with adoption. There is.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. And there's so many stories. I mean, like, so much of it is, I know when I did some research on Korean adoption, it's like, well, a lot of these kids weren't supposed to be adopted in the first place. Like, I mean, there's just so many, like, kids were kind of stolen and then like adopted out. And I mean, it's horrifying and horrible. And I do personally feel that I am lucky that I have the family that I have, and that I got to meet my birth family and get along so well with them and love them so much. And I've met my birth father too. And sometimes we text, like, it's like we met once and sometimes we're like, thinking about you, Merry Christmas or whatever, and that's great. I love it. But like, I don't think people realize what they're saying when they're telling a child they are lucky that they have a family that has adopted them, or like anything like that. Oh wow, you are so lucky that this lovely nice family decided to help sad you that nobody, it's just like, that's not what they think they're saying. I think that people think they're making nice conversation with a child, and they're like, oh wow, it's really nice that this happened to you, right? But that's not how it's perceived. That's not how it comes across. And what you hear is, wow, nobody loved you. Like, isn't it great that somebody decided to, like, that's really nice for you. You should be so grateful. You should be so thankful. And I think that's more damaging than helpful. So please just don't make small talk like that if you don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
I'm so upset right now.
Same. My whole world is like rocked. Abuse is very common in those situations. And yeah, wow. There's just so much. There's so much.
I feel like a lot of people who go through those situations feel like there's so much risk in talking about what happened to them, because I know that when my birth mom wrote her book, the family kind of stopped talking to her very much because she exposed the abuse that happened to her, and what was going on, like all of the things that happened. She was like, this is what happened to me, and that's not okay. And so her family was just kind of like, well, we don't want to talk to you because, like, that's not nice stuff to talk about. Right? Like, and I don't know. I remember being quite young and noticing that so many celebrities were like, we're adopting children from third world countries because we want to help the country and the people there and stuff like that. But I remember seeing it and being like, do you really, or do you just want everybody to know that you're helpful and you're such a good person because you're so helpful? And like, I think that there's some part of it that sometimes can be performative and be kind of like, well, I did such a good thing. Like, don't talk about the bad stuff that happened, because like that like will negate all the good stuff that I did, and people thought I was so good, I'm not saying that's everybody at all. I'm just saying, like, in certain situations, in certain circumstances, that's what it can feel like, witnessing other people trying to do the right thing by specifically requesting children from specific countries. Like, that feels weird. I don't know.
Suzie, when it comes to your identity and how you walk about this life as a biracial woman, who also identifies as Asian. Is there anything that you wish people would know, or anything that you would like to tell people to know about you, or to know about other people who identify the same or similarly to you?
I think for me, it's just a whole lot of like, don't assume, I guess. Don't assume you know. Don't. Also, if somebody reveals to you like, oh yeah, and then I'm like, I'm half Asian, it's not the right response. I would have never, what? That's not a good response. It is not helpful. It is years of me receiving that make me go, no, I know that it doesn't look like it, like, and it's okay that you didn't know, it's like everyone's so scandalized that they didn't know. I just let people be who they are, and don't act like it's the end of the world when you find out somebody is a different ethnicity than you thought they were. Please.
It's the please at the end that got me. It's the please at the end that got me.
Please.
Please. I was, again, doing a theater move thing, and it was me, and everybody else was full Asian, I'm pretty sure. And everybody was talking about what it was like growing up in an Asian family. And everyone was like, math was like this for me, and math was like that for me. Like, specifically, honestly, that's what they were talking about. I know that's like a stereotype.
Oh God.
But it was funny because they were talking about stereotypes. That's why. And they were like, well, what was math like for you? And it was like, well, my parents expected this, and my parents expected that. And nobody asked me. They went around the circle and everybody just skipped me. And I was like, well, I guess, I wasn't raised with Asian parents, but then I was just kind of like, well, nobody really cared about my math. Like, I just wanted everyone to know. Nobody really cared about my math. And one of the guys looked at me and he goes, well, you're not Asian.
What?
So it's not the same. And I went, I am though. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm half Korean. And he was like, oh, well.
Oh, no apology.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't have never guessed that. And I was like, okay, cool.
It's not for you to guess.
It's
not
not
up for debate.
Up for you to guess. That is not what equates. That's not what equates my identity, is your guess. Like, are you serious? I wish I could guess people's budgets. I wish I could guess people's bank accounts. I wish somebody could guess my financials. Like, come on.
Right.
It was just like, no, it was just like, if we're all going around the circle and talking about it, does it matter if I have Asian parents or not? Isn't it just polite if I also get to talk?
It's a circle.
Don't skip me. It's just from all sides is what it is what I'm trying to say. It's like when I go to Korea, everyone's like, hi, you're white. And then when I'm here, everyone's kind of like, well, I don't really know, but like definitely not Asian and stuff. So it's just it's a bag of me being like, but I exist and I matter, and trying to believe it.
Absolutely. This has been a great conversation. And I feel like we've just covered so much, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for you being on here. I'm so thankful.
Suzie, seriously, thank you so much for telling your story. It's so important, and I really appreciate your honesty and your openness, and also your joy. You bring a lot of joy into this difficult conversation.
But thank you so much for having me on your podcast, both of you. Like, this is amazing and wonderful, and I just love it. And I was at a social distance gathering last night, and people were talking about listening to your episodes already. They were like, oh my God, it was amazing. Like, I was crying, and like, so just know that like you're doing really great and important and wonderful things that mean a lot to so many people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Mixed Messages. For more information, check out our website at mixedmessagespod.com. If you like what you hear, leave us a review. The more reviews we get, the easier it is to get our message out. Follow us on all social media platforms. And for extra content, join our Patreon. Thanks for listening. See you next week.